And we're continuing with the 10th chapter of Dragons in the Waters, which is called The Body in the Hearse. The captain and Boone were waiting for them on the dock. "But where is Simon?" Van Leyden demanded. "Simon? But he has returned to the ship." Gutierrez smiled at Miss Leonis, at Van Leyden and Boone. "What are you talking about?" Boone asked. "The English priest was at the airport when Simon and I arrived. He was waiting in an official car sent from the police department of Caracas. When he said that he wished to question the boy immediately, I hesitated, of course, but he persuaded me. He is a man of much authority." "Where are they, then?" Van Leyden tried to keep his voice calm. "The Englishman said that he would talk on the way back to the ship. His driver was one of Huerto's top men. How could I refuse? I was outranked. Surely they are here by now? They left half an hour before Miss Fair's plane arrived." Miss Leonis asked sharply, "Where is my nephew? What is going on?" She felt old and bewildered, and her lace parasol did little to keep the heat of the sun from beating down on her. "It is of no moment, gracias, senora," Gutierrez burbled. "They will, of course, be here momentarily." A large black limousine drew up, and a uniformed chauffeur sprang out. "Where is the Englishman?" he demanded excitedly. What had been confusion now turned to chaos. The limousine, ordered by Hurtado, had been delayed by a flat tire. When the chauffeur finally reached the airport, he was told that his charge had already departed, that he had been met by an agent of the Commandant Alejandro Hurtado. But that, declared the chauffeur, was impossible. He was the agent. The Commandant had phoned him. He was always Hurtado's official chauffeur in the Port of Dragons. Van Leyden looked at his watch. His anger toward the dead man was even deeper than his anxiety. Was history going to repeat itself? Was Fair, even dead, going to cause his resignation? He said calmly enough, "We will wait here an hour. By then, the Netherlands Council, Mynheer Heinrich Vermeer, will be here. He was vacationing in the hills, but he's already en route to Port of Dragons and should be here shortly. In the meantime, Miss Fair, while we are waiting for your nephew and the Englishman, we will try to make you comfortable in the ship's salon, which is considerably cooler than the deck. Please be so kind as to follow me." He took her parasol and held it over her until they reached the cover of the ship. Miss Leonis was not sure that she was not going to faint before she got to the salon. Van Leyden, seeing her tremble, put his arm about her and helped her upstairs into a comfortable chair, where she would get what little breeze there was. "I do not understand what is happening," she said. Van Leyden rang the bell for Geraldo. "Miss Fair, when there has been a murder, things are apt to be incomprehensible temporarily." "Who is this English priest with whom Simon is supposed to be?" "Is with, I am sure, is with. He is a friend of one of the passengers who sent for him." "Isn't it a bit late for a priest?" "It appears that he has worked for Interpol and has a reputation as someone who can solve difficult problems." "Let's hope that he can. Would it be possible for me to have some tea?" "I have already rung for it." "Thank you. You are very kind." "Please try to rest, Miss Fair. You have had a difficult journey." "Yes, thank you." "Simon will be most happy to see you. He is a good lad. Here is Geraldo. Tea for Miss Fair, please, Geraldo, and something light to eat. Please excuse me, Miss Fair. I will send Simon to you the moment he arrives." The anxiety with which he looked at his watch as he crossed the threshold belied the confidence in his voice. Polly hurried out onto the promenade deck and went to Charles, who was reading in the shade of the canvas canopy. "Aunt Leonis is in the salon." He dropped his book. "What?" "Aunt Leonis is in the salon." "Who told you?" "I saw her." "Are you sure?" "We did see her in Savannah, Charles. Who else could it be?" "Where's Simon, then?" "He's not with Aunt Leonis. He should be here with us. If he's not with Aunt Leonis, he should be here with us. Have you been in the cabin lately? It's too hot. Let's look for him." Charles closed his book and put it on his chair. With a worried look, he followed his sister. Simon was not to be found. Polly said, "It's like when we were looking for Cousin Forsyth and couldn't find him. Do you suppose—" "No, I don't. Let's go to the captain." The captain was on the bridge with Dr. O'Keefe and Mr. Theo. Quietly, he told the children that Simon was supposed to have left the airport in a government car with Canon Tallis. He did not say that the Englishman and Simon had already gone when the official chauffeur reached the airport. Instead, he made his voice reassuring. No, we must not become alarmed too soon. I've had word from El Commandant Alejandro Hurtado, chief of police in Caracas, who is coming today. Evidently, Commodore Hurtado is an old friend of the Englishman's. Dr. O'Keefe nodded. Yes, Tom has friends all over the world. If he has been met by a government official, we needn't worry. But Mr. Theo shook his head so that his white hair flew about wildly. They should be here if all is well. They should have been here an hour ago. The captain did not deny this. Let us not alarm the old lady. It is possible that the government driver is not familiar with the route. They may have lost their way. Tom Tallis does not lose his way, Mr. Theo said. It had to be conceded that something had gone wrong. Canon Tallis and Simon ought to be on the Orion, and they were not, and there had been no word from or about them. Walking up and down the promenade deck, Gutierrez wrung his hands. His face streamed with sweat like tears. But it's impossible, impossible, he kept repeating. Van Leyden told the assembled passengers, not Leonis. The mayor will be here at any moment. Hurtado is flying in from Caracas and will arrive after dinner. They will order everything. His face was pale and all the lines seemed to have deepened. Dr. Wordsworth whispered to Dr. Eisenstein. This must be hell for Van Leyden. Dr. Wordsworth whispered to Dr. Eisenstein. This must be hell for Van Leyden. She drained her glass and shook the remaining ice. Dr. Eisenstein whispered back, and for the old lady, she must be wild with anxiety over the boy. Van Leyden said, I think that we should all go to the dining room now. The cook has prepared an excellent meal for us. We must eat, you know. Mr. Smith took his wife's hand. This is more than Ferris murder, Patty. That nice young boy, she squeezed his hand. I hope he hasn't come to any harm. Polly said, I'm not hungry. Charles answered, neither am I, but the captain's right. We have to try to eat. Passengers and officials ate in strained, near silence. All fragments of conversation sounded unusually loud, though voices were kept low. When Dr. Wordsworth asked, Pass the salt, please, in a quiet voice, everybody jumped. Miss Leonis sat in Simon's place. Cousin Forsyth's chair had been taken away. She ate a little because she knew she had to, but she did not talk. She was silent not only because she was exhausted and worried beyond belief about Simon, but because she bore the burden of Quentin Fair's journal, and did not want to talk until she knew who it was she should talk to. The O'Keefes, she knew, were as anxious about Simon as she was. She had spent the afternoon with Mrs. O'Keefe and the younger children. She trusted the O'Keefes. It might be that she should talk to Dr. O'Keefe. She would wait and see. The two professors and the Smiths she sensed to be preoccupied with problems of their own, which might include the disappearance of Simon and the English canon, but went beyond them. The old Greek organist she felt to be a friend. He obviously cared about Simon, but it was he who had sent for the Englishman. He was attentive to her in a quiet, unobtrusive way, not talking, but seeing that her teacup was filled, that she had salt and pepper. Butter. At the other table, Charles whispered, Where is Aunt Leonis going to sleep? Polly answered, Geraldo says they've booked rooms for her and for Uncle Father at the Hotel del Lago in Port of Dragons. Charles, where are they, Simon and Uncle Father? I wish I knew. Jan came into the dining room and whispered to the captain, whose somber face relaxed slightly. He spoke to the assembled company. The mayor and the Tado are both here. May I ask you, please, to stay in the dining room after dinner for just a short while until I know their wishes. He bowed and left, speaking in a low voice to Jan, who closed the glass doors between dining room and salon, thereby cutting off the breeze. The passengers waited in tense silence, which Mr. Theo broke. If this Commandant Hurtado is a friend of Tom Tallis's, he'll find Tom and Simon in short order. Miss Leonis looked at him gratefully. Geraldo hovered, refilling their water glasses. Perhaps I should bring coffee, he suggested. It's too hot, Dr. Wordsworth said. Then Jan reappeared. His expression seemed to have set into a heavy mask of apprehension. Now that he was not smiling, Charles remembered that Jan's unusual expression was a pleasant smile. Captain Van Leyden would like to see you all in the Captain Van Leyden would like to see you all on the promenade deck. It is cooler than the salon. We will serve coffee there, Geraldo. Yes, sir. The colored lights around the awning on the promenade deck were lit, giving it a carnival appearance in macabre contrast to the mood of the assembly. On shore, small lights blinked on in the huts, moving in the wind and trembling like Christmas tree lights up the mountainside. A single very bright star pulsed in the blue-green sky. The dock was brightly lit with bulbs on cords stretched from warehouse to warehouse and from telephone and light poles. Under one of the light poles was an ancient Hispano Souza, highly polished, parked beside a large black limousine. The captain and the two men rose to greet the passengers. They had been sitting at one of the small tables, on which stood a bottle of Dutch gin and 3 small glasses. Van Leyden made the introductions. The consul, Heinrich Vermeer, was a heavy, straw-haired bulldog of a man in crisp white shorts, creased blazer, and solar toupee. Charles heard his father whisper to Mr. Theo, "He looks more like an Englishman in India than a Dutchman in Venezuela." Mr. Theo whispered back, "Did you see the Hispano Souza? But it's his." The commandant from Caracas, Alejandro Hurtado, was tall for a Latin, a dark man in dark clothes, with a dark, sharp jaw, which would be purpley black almost immediately after he had shaved. Vermeer shook hands all round, beaming affably, as though this was a purely social occasion. Hurtado revealed no expression whatsoever, but he looked at each passenger intently when he was introduced, as though memorizing name and face. "I'm glad I have no secrets to hide from him," Polly thought, as Hurtado bowed over her hand. "And I'm glad he looks a hard person to fool." Gutierrez was not there. "Where is Simon?" Aunt Leonis demanded of Hurtado. Simultaneously, Mr. Theo asked, "Where is Tom Tallis?" In the dimness of the jungle evening, Canon Tallis rubbed his hand wearily over the painful lump on his bare pate. "Now, Simon, we had better prepare for the night. Are you a hand at camping?" "No, sir. Camping wasn't exactly Aunt Leonis's thing. Not exactly mine either. But necessity is an excellent teacher." The priest had taken off the dark jacket of his clerical suit and rolled up his shirt sleeves. "The first thing to do is collect enough dry wood for a fire. Heat or no heat, it's a good thing we're shaded here. My unprotected head sunburns over easily. First thing tomorrow, I'm going to have to make some kind of head covering. My Panama is somewhere in that hearse." "I can make a sort of hat for you, sir," Simon said. "There's something I know how to do by weaving palm fronds together." "Good lad. I shall be much obliged. You do that, and I'll try to get a fire going." "But why do we need a fire, sir, when it's so horribly hot?" The canon smiled. "Not for warmth, certainly, though we may be grateful of it during the night. If we can keep the smoke going up through the trees, it will be an indication of our whereabouts, which could be spotted by a helicopter. Gutierrez is not the only one with a whirlybird. I'm certain that Hurtado will have the jungle searched." By the time the canon had a small fire burning in the center of their clearing, Simon had woven him a passable head covering, which he tried on at once. "Yes, this will do admirably tomorrow." He should have looked ludicrous, his bald head covered by the green palm hat, his clerical collar formally about his throat, his arms scratched and bleeding in several places from his endeavors. But all Simon thought was, "I know why Polly loves him. He does make me feel that everything is going to be all right." In their little clearing, it was already night. The canon squatted by the fire, carefully feeding it. "As I wish I could feed the two of us. Tomorrow we'll have to look for nuts and berries, and maybe we can crack a coconut between a couple of stones. But we'll have to be careful. I'm no expert on the edible roots of the Venezuelan jungle." Maybe I can help there, Simon said. "We have a lot of the same plants at home, sir. Aunt Leonis and I eat a lot of wild stuff. Good then. The two of us will make an intrepid pair. All shall be well now. What I would like us to do this evening, to quell the pangs of hunger, is to go over in detail everything you have already told me, and more. Don't be afraid to repeat yourself. Remember that nothing you can tell me is trivial, no matter how unimportant it may seem. If I can get a clear picture of what went on at sea, possibly I'll have an idea about my unexpected reception at the alleged airport, and why you and I have been dumped here like two babes in the woods, whose mouth has to be kept closed by Gutierrez, and why. Let's go even further back. Start with the arrival of Cousin Forsyth at Faro. And we will pause there.